It's November 20th, 1861. A young Massachusetts private finds himself a long way from his Millbury, Massachusetts home, along the banks of the Potomac River in northern Virginia. And the giddy, boyish enthusiasm that he had when he marched off the war is gone now. It's replaced by the cold, harsh reality of war, and it's compounded because he really misses his friends and family back in Millbury, Massachusetts. So Rowan E. Bowen takes up his pen to write his good friend Davis Guild and express to him his thoughts on this Thanksgiving Eve. And he writes,
Friend Guild, things are quite lively here. We got paid off this morning and have eat and drank Poolsville all up. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and I know you will think of me. Tremendous cannonading has been going on all afternoon in the direction of Darnestown. One goes off about every word I write. Just my luck to be on guard today over in town. Knapsack drill, divine services at 10 a.m. and dress parade is all the 15th has to do today. I wished I knew just what you were doing at this moment. Wished I was there now, you can bet your life on that. Roland E. Bowen, Private 15th Massachusetts, Millbury.
Hi, I'm Chuck Arning, National Park Service Ranger here in the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. And the story we find in a letter that gets sent home on Thanksgiving Eve to his friends and family in Millbury, Massachusetts, gives us a sense of just who Roland Bowen really was. And I'm going to tell you a secret. And it's the kind of secret you can share with a lot of the people. And that secret is that history is fun. These stories about other people are really fun to learn about. They're fascinating. Now, why would I say that? We see history is about real people struggling in the world to overcome the obstacles that life puts in their path. And they're all our ancestors. They could be very famous, or they could be people we've never even heard of. But they all have fascinating stories. And unfortunately, we don't often know too much about our ancestors. We may know when they were born, if they married, what the names of their kids were, and even if we're lucky, where they're buried in the year they died. But outside of that, we really don't know too much about them. And that's too bad. It's a real shame, because they are interesting people. If we knew them, we might really like them. But they all have stories about them, interesting stories. And that's what today's show is about. Family histories, genealogy, and how we can pull together these dates and names and put some flesh and blood on them. So I tell you what, why don't you join me as we travel throughout the Blackstone Valley, seeking out good family stories and trying to learn a little bit of how we can learn more about our ancestors.
Davis, and we had some real escapades on that thing. We wrecked it. I was going to drive out on the motorcycle with my friend. He was on the back. And just as we started out the driveway, a friend drove in with his car, and I was trying to avoid hitting the car. So I succeeded in running over my dog, and then I hit the barn. So the front wheel was pushed up by the footrest. It took a while to repair that. Of course, we had no licenses. Didn't hurt him, I'm surprised. But he was kind of leery of that motorcycle for a while.
She used to tell me the story how my great-grandfather came to America and the ship got lost and landed in Australia, and it was there that he learned English. Then he came to America. He was an interpreter in the customs house in New Bedford, Mass. And it was through him that when the Cape Verdeans came from New Bedford, it was he that was the interpreter.
One winter, my grandfather went home and he was cleaning icicles off his roof line on a ladder. And the ladder tipped over, and he broke both his legs and he broke his arm. So they brought him up to the hospital in the ambulance. The doctor told him, "Look, Fred, you're going to have to be out of work for maybe a month. You're going to be in a wheelchair." My grandfather told him, "Nothing doing. You put walking casts on me today, I'm not missing work." And so the doctor argued back and forth with him, and my grandfather was bound and determined he had that doctor put on those walking casts. The grandfather missed 3 days of work. He called the mill and he told our maintenance man, "You make me a little stool with wheels on it so I can get around." He drove himself to work with a stick working his gas pedal, and they met him at the door and they put him on this little stool and they wheeled him into the mill, and he came around to work every day with a stick pushing himself on the floor, making sure everything was okay.
What was difficult for all of us is that ceremonials were technically against the law. Speaking the language was against the law. For safety's sake and protection, for instance, mentioning my father again, when he was a little boy, they were still rounding up some of the southern tribes on the East Coast and sending them out west. So our people here were never sure that there wouldn't be something come up from Washington or from the state governments that would ship us all out west for forever, and that would be the end of it. So we had to live almost as invisible people. We could, when our participation in the community had to be with as little Native American identity as possible for self-preservation.
Stories that illustrate family pride, stories filled with humor, stories that honor work, stories about growing up, and yes, even those stories that reflect the dark side of our history. All these individual stories, our victories, our defeats, the stories that uplift us, and yes, even those stories that make us hang our head with shame, are an important part of our history, and they need to be preserved. But that's only one man's opinion. Let's catch up with some people who have their own thoughts of why family stories should be preserved.
I think, number one, it's important to know who you are. And it's rather your self-esteem. It lets you know that you're connected to somebody. You're connected to this country. You're connected to people, how you're connected to people. And it gives you a sense of belonging. So I really do think it's extremely important to know who you are, what your story is.
I believe culture, in a broad sense, is identity. And while as human beings, we have a common sort of ancestry and culture that we can share, but the more we know about our individual heritage, the, say, legends, historical anecdotes, family situations that are unique to our own family group, family circle, and to ourselves, we have no sense of identity if there isn't something that sets us apart from all the other people with their own separate identities. And it's good that we can come together and share those differences, respect one another's differences, and yet not be forced to give up anything that should be our rightful heritage by birth. And that really is the essence of what makes a person an individual.
But wouldn't lose, you won't lose sight of who you are, and you won't lose where you get your family tree. Sometimes people do things they don't even know why, and it's because it's been passed on down from the grandparent to the grandparent to the mother. I do a lot of things because my mother told me. When I find out, it's because her mother told, and then you go all the way back. So certain things we do, it's not just because we just decide to do it. It's been passed on, maybe through telling the stories or through watching our parents do things that we repeat it.
First stop on an investigation into family history should in fact be your last stop. We're here at the American Antiquarian Society in Worcester, Massachusetts, in front of their huge library, which contains over 3 million pieces of America's written word. Books, pamphlets, newspapers, diaries, broadsides. If America wrote it down, there's a good chance it's preserved right here. Even more fascinating is the fact that the American Antiquarian Society also has a rich genealogical section here. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go inside and we're going to meet with the Assistant Director for Reader Services, Marie Lamoureux, who's going to explain to us the rich resources here, and more importantly, tell us about the homework we're going to have to do first. What are some of the things those people should do first before they get here?
Well, our collections focus on the pre-1876 period. So in most cases, anyone using the library needs to have done some advanced research. Anyone starting with their research should really start with speaking to some of their older family members and getting background, because they can be a wealth of information where their parents were born and going back that way there. And once they have gone back 2 or 3 generations, then they should use the town halls, courthouses, public libraries. And after they've done a little advanced research, they would probably find information in this library. Our focus is national in scope. We're not limited to just Massachusetts or New England. We collect from all over the country. We have a large collection of town, county, and state histories from Massachusetts to California to Hawaii. We also have a very good collection of Canadian history here, so if anyone is working on their Canadian genealogy, we have a good collection of French-Canadian families. We also have the publications of a lot of town, county, and state historical and genealogical societies. And these are just the main sources for genealogies. Not only do we have those, but we have a wonderful collection of directories and institutional materials that may be helpful. Well, we have the vital records to the Massachusetts towns up through 1850. We have a lot of the publications of genealogical societies. We have a lot of books on how to do your research and where to find the different types of sources. That would be very helpful to someone just starting as well. That would give them more or less an idea of the process in doing genealogy, the steps involved. We have people who come from all over the country, and we also have people who use the library on a regular basis. And in most cases, they're just looking for that one elusive ancestor, and some of them have been working for years. And every once in a while, you'll hear a shout in the reading room when they do find it, so it's very exciting.
Any tips you could give them on how to best handle their first experience here?
Well, anyone who uses the library for the first time would fill out an application, and it's very brief. And then they would speak to a senior staff member. For genealogy, they would usually speak to someone in my department, either me or Tim Sheehan or Tom Knowles. And then they're given a very in-depth orientation to the collections. They're shown how the card catalogs are set up and also how the basic genealogical sections are arranged. And then if they have any questions, they can just come up to the desk, and anyone there can help them.
Marie, you've been kind enough to select some very fine references. They're kind of unusual. Can you select a couple of them and kind of give us an idea of what they have to offer and why they're so unique?
Well, we do have, in our local history collection, as I told you, that our collections are national in scope. And we collect from all over the country, and I pulled out a selection of some of the local histories. This one here is The Voters and Taxpayers of Bureau County, Illinois. And it's unique because it lists all the individuals who resided in the county, and it gives where they, what their occupation was, when they were born in some cases, their address, their political affiliation, religion, and where they came from, like if they were from Europe or from some other part of the country. So this is a very good source for doing some research on your family history. And we also have a very good collection of city directories. We have approximately 7,000 city directories. And we collect city directories through 1876. This is a city directory of San Francisco for 1854. And again, it lists the individual's name and their occupation and where they lived. But it also is very interesting because of the advertisements that they include, and they have maps. And also they list the different departments in the city and the employees of the different departments, so you can find information that way there. We have a wonderful collection of published genealogies, and in a way they're a beginning and an ending, because they're the finished product of someone working on their family history. And they can be very small in the sense that they can only be a few pages and only include very basic information like births, marriages, and deaths. We have a very ornate genealogy here on the Chandler family, but what makes this very interesting is whoever owned this genealogy interleaved it with specimens of handwriting of different family members and photographs of family members. And also this genealogy actually goes on to describe the physical, what people look like. It includes wills, and it's a very detailed and rich source of information.
What's the one thing they should bring with them?
Well, they should bring their notes with them. They should have their background information. That's really what they need. They need to, a lot of people come and they're sometimes not prepared, and that they don't have their, they haven't done their preliminary work, or they've left their information in California. So they really need to have their background information with them.
And perhaps a little patience?
And a little patience. Some people have been working on their family history for decades.
We're using this wonderful old house, the Smith Appleby House in Smithfield, Rhode Island. It's managed by the Smithfield Historical Society to help us create a sense of the past. But it just might be the present where you want to start in your search for family stories. Now, believe it or not, the process isn't all that complicated. Now let's go and catch up with Ranger Kevin Kleiberg to get a few tips on just how it's done.
Tracing your genealogy is a great way to find out more about you and your family. Most people are going to find, though, that once they've created a family tree, they want to put some leaves on those branches. They want to have some stories to make those names from the past come alive. Now, in some cases, you'll find those stories in letters or diaries left by your ancestors. But many times, important pieces of the puzzle will come from family stories and traditions. And a great way for you to start saving those stories is to create your own family oral history collection. Now, history has always been very important in my family. For example, my middle name is Christopher, and that comes after a man named Christopher Rowan, who was born in 1740 near Philadelphia, and he went on to fight for the Pennsylvania line in the Continental Army from 1776 on through Yorktown. But you don't have to go back all the way to the Revolutionary War in order to find some fascinating stories. For example, I never got to talk with my grandfather, and yet I know he was born on a farm in Sugar Grove, Ohio, and went on to become a chemist, working first for Post in Battle Creek, Michigan, and then working for General Foods in Hoboken, where he made things like freeze-dried coffee and red Jell-O. Now, those might not seem like as important things as fighting for the freedom of your country, but it's certainly something I can relate to every time I go to the supermarket. Most families already have an oral tradition, tales of triumphs and tragedies that have been passed on through the generations. But as the years go by, those stories begin to fade. How many of you have ever said, "If only I could remember that story that Grandma used to tell"? So this year, when you get together for holidays and festivals and other family occasions, don't just swap your stories, save them for yourself and for future generations.
My mother would tell me, and I became interested because she always spoke about her grandparents, which was my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, and I used to record those little tales on a notebook. And because I knew shorthand, I would actually make interviews with her and get information. And I kept records of it, but what really gave me a great interest and curiosity in really doing more research is when Roots came out. I already had a lot of information. I got a surge of curiosity, and it intensified my interest in digging in to find out who my ancestors were and who my forebears were.
Hi, I'm National Park Service Ranger Kevin Kleiberg, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to put together your own family oral history collection. Now, this can be as complicated or as simple as you'd like to make it. In some cases, one of the best things you can do is just put a tape recorder down on the table the next time your family gets together to tell stories. Now you might want to take a minute or so to get the recorder in the right place and maybe invest in a small microphone to make the quality better. But it doesn't take a whole lot of time or a whole lot of effort to start saving those stories. One thing is to make sure that each member of the family identifies themselves before they start talking. And when you're done, make sure you mark the tape with its date and where you made the recordings so you'll know that for future reference. And then, once the stories start flowing, just make sure the tape keeps rolling. And if your family is one of those that likes to talk throughout the night, make sure you have a couple of tapes to spare. Of course, in this day and age where video cameras are almost as common as tape recorders, making yourself a video family album is also another wonderful resource. And the great thing about that is you can begin to introduce artifacts such as photos or mementos, which can really bring to life your discussion about your family history. And nothing gets the conversation started like passing around a family photo album or perhaps a scrapbook of some old newspaper clippings.
The key is, whenever you're doing family stories and you're sitting around members of your family, is you want everyone to be comfortable. So you sit down with what you'd normally, whether it's coffee, donuts, whatever it is your family would normally do, you sit down and you enjoy it. Because you want people to be loose. You want them to be able to explain and go into their past. Because sometimes that can be a little painful. You're going to bring up memories sometimes. So notes could be very helpful. And in this case, we're with the Hudsons. We're sitting in the kitchen of Dick and Anita Hudson in South Grafton, Massachusetts. And as you see, Dick is being kind enough to pour some coffee for us here. I'm sure he does that all the time here. But this is the aspect of being comfortable. Because we're going to talk about some of the family stories that the Hudsons have. One of the other important things to take place here is that you want to eliminate all the distractions. So there's a radio in the background, and I'm going to ask Dick, would you mind turning off the radio? Because you want to make sure you have a good sound. So when Anita and Dick begin to tell their stories, we can hear. Because for generations, we're going to capture these stories, and they'll be passed along. So we want to do them so everyone can hear clearly what's being said.
Start off with an interview, or maybe you ask them some simple questions. When were you born? Where did you grow up? And then try to lead into some more interesting questions that will lead into conversation.
My father was Fred Small. He was born in 1890, and he was a hard-working man.
Now, how do you know that?
Because he provided for us. A story that always comes to my mind is our Christmas. On Christmas, he would work as a watchman down at Fisherville Mill because Hector Lagasse was a watchman down there. But come Christmas, he wanted the day off, and my father, having 4 children, they needed the money, so he would work from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, which meant for us, our Christmas didn't start until he got home. And we'd have to wait for our presents, we'd have to wait for our big dinner, and that always stuck in my mind.
A few basic conversation topics could include, what kinds of games or sports did you play as a child, and who were your best friends? What did your family do on vacations and holidays? And it can also be useful to ask about memories of key point in history, like, what was life like growing up in the Depression or during the Second World War?
He says, you got farm experience. He says, why don't I transfer you into the Seabees construction battalion? And they shipped me right to Hawaii. I got my jungle training in Hawaii. From Hawaii, I went to Anahuac, and then from Anahuac, I went right to Okinawa. And I spent all my time in Okinawa driving bulldozer and building airstrips. We built all the airstrips on Okinawa, Yontan, Yonabaru, Hawase airstrip. We weren't even done Hawase airstrip, and the night fighters were coming in, and we weren't even finished the airstrip yet. And then I had to go up north to pick up cement that they needed. I brought 2 fellows with me, and we loaded the cement near the docks where the ships were coming in. And on the way back, the 2 fellows were up on top of the cement. They had no idea what was going to happen. And all of a sudden, I could hear this zing going by, and it was snipers, Japanese snipers. And the 2 fellows up and back, of course, it was an open cab, and they jumped down into the front seat, and I just floored the thing and headed back to our area. And we were lucky we made it, because it was kind of scary. I never thought I'd make it back home. Because the first night that I landed on Okinawa, we got a kamikaze raid. I mean, they were coming in with planes and they'd aim for the ships. And they were tied in. I mean, they were strapped in the planes. And they even had motorboats that were loaded with dynamite. And they tried to head right for the ships that were coming in. And I mean, it scared the hell out of me.
Now, once you've completed your family oral history collection, make copies of it and share it with everyone who participated. And remember, the keys are have fun with it and make sure the entire family is involved. And that includes yourself, because even though it's always fun to be the person coordinating these events, you too have important stories and memories to add to your family's oral history. Well, this has been National Park Service Ranger Kevin Kleiberg from the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor.
George, one of the things that it seems like you've learned is that the genealogy and collecting family stories is rather painstakingly hard work, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you're never sure which, you have to follow lots of avenues. You're never sure where it's going to lead you, and you may hit some dead ends, but you have to talk to people, and you follow every lead that you get.
It's hard work.
It's real hard work. That's right. But you can't give up. I think you can't give up. And you never know where you're going to find some information. I was telling you about this, this person in my family that came in with General Burnside. A woman tracked us down once, came to see my uncle, because she had read about this in General Burnside, read about him in General Burnside's biography. Did we know that this was mentioned in the biography? No. But she had come to see us to verify that this was the family, and she'd been to the cemetery. So there, there's a piece of legitimacy in this story that you didn't know. There's so much that families do talk, I think, about their history. But sometimes you can't base what you retell on the oral story. You have to go back and try to verify all that has been told to you.
So I started to write to the archives in Waltham. I wrote to the archives in Washington, D.C. And the woman in Waltham was very, very good. I would give her copies. I made copies of the actual citizenship paper, and through that, she was able to send me excellent copies of the Declaration of Intention to become citizens of my great-grandparents. And in those papers is where I found the actual schooner they came in, the date of entry into America. When you do genealogy, you gotta write the name of the person every way you could think. This is all the different ways that I find my great-grandfather's name written. Joseph P. Gamboa, Leopoldina. He went from José Pereira Gamboa, and he ended up in America being called Joe Perry. Would you believe that?
No.
How they changed? So I couldn't find things. I'm saying, but then when I realized that's right, they Americanized his name. His name was Joseph Gamboa Pereira. They changed that Pereira to Perry.
Well, this has been Chuck Arning, National Park Service Ranger here in the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. And if there's one piece of wisdom I can impart to you about gathering family stories and family history, it is to do it now. Don't put it off. Gather your immediate family together and begin the process. Reach out to your aunts and uncles and grandparents if they're still alive, because they're a valuable resource. And time marches on, and now is the time to get those great family stories. And when you've collected them, share them with others. For our history is rich with the struggles of ordinary people. It's what makes history fascinating, what makes history fun. And take advantage of this season. Gather those stories and do it now.